Hello everybody, welcome to the Literacy Lounge. We are starting a series on teaching multilingual learners, and today's video will be about phonemic awareness. So first I want to define phonemic awareness for you. It actually falls under this umbrella term of phonological awareness. So phonological awareness is more broad and involves other skills like rhyming, syllables, alliteration. Those things involve whole words, or sentences. Phonemic awareness is really dialed into individual sounds. So the definition is the ability to focus on and manipulate sounds within words. And then these are the different skills within phonemic awareness: identifying sounds, blending, segmenting, and manipulating sounds. So some examples of what that might look like in the classroom: if I wanted a student to identify a sound, I would say, "What sound do you hear at the beginning of cat?" And they would respond with k. Blending would be if I give the student the sounds k, at, and I wanted them to blend it together into the word cat. Segmenting would be the opposite. I give them the word cat, tell me all the sounds you hear in cat, and they would segment it k, at. And then lastly, manipulating is changing sounds. So if I said, change the k in cat to b, what's the new word? They would have to identify the new word as bat. So where does phonemic awareness fall in the grand scheme of reading acquisition? I have the Scarborough's reading rope here, and we see phonological awareness and phonemic awareness fall in the word recognition strands. So these are really foundational skills. They're going to help build students' decoding abilities, their sight recognition, ultimately their fluency, and then we know those strands get woven with the language comprehension strands to build skilled reading. Now we know all students benefit from explicit instruction in these areas. That includes multilingual learners, but instruction for those multilingual learners requires some adaptations. So what are some of those adaptations? What should phonemic awareness instruction really look like for multilingual learners? Students should have opportunities to build phonemic awareness in both their native language and English. There are studies that show that proficiency with those skills in their native language can help lead to proficiency in English. Phonemic awareness can be difficult for some students depending on their native language because some sounds in English don't exist in their native language and vice versa. So it's important to know about the sounds in your student's native language, how those sounds connect to English, and what are some sounds that might be tricky for your student. It's also important to build opportunities for oral language and vocabulary building within phonemic awareness activities. A lot of times in these activities, you'll see students are just manipulating sounds really quickly, and they're not really talking about what those words mean. And for native English speakers, that's a perfectly fine phonemic awareness activity, but it's really going to be a lot more beneficial for multilingual learners to discuss what the new words are meaning, connect them to visuals so they know the words that they're saying. These are some basic principles of what that lesson could look like for a multilingual learner, and then I'm going to give you an example and demonstration of what it looks like in action. But basically, a phonemic awareness lesson for a multilingual learner should include some kind of task, either the identifying, segmenting, blending, manipulating, and it should have a focused sound. So based on what we discussed, the difference in your native language, the student's native language and English, what's a sound that either doesn't exist or they seem to be struggling on or they haven't grasped yet? Use that as a focused sound throughout the lesson. And then you should always be providing a lot of models of the sound, and then the student should be provided multiple opportunities to practice. And then, like I mentioned in the previous slide, building that vocabulary and oral language through discussion or visuals should be a main part of your lesson as well. And then using the new word in both their native language and in English, either through discussion or speaking sentences about the words that you're creating. So here's what that might look like in action. I chose this focus sound of R because if a student is a native Spanish speaker, this sound does not exist in the Spanish language like it does in English. So that would be our focus sound chosen for that reason. So I would start the lesson by drawing attention to that sound. Today we'll practice saying words with the sound R. Can you say that sound? This is what your mouth should look like, and I would show the students and describe it while also having a visual there of the articulatory gesture. And then say the word arm, that's our picture clue, and we hear R at the beginning of arm. And we would make sure that they're forming the sound properly before we move on to the actual phonemic awareness manipulation activity. So the phonemic awareness skill that I'm focusing on in this lesson is that sound manipulation. So we're going to be changing sounds in words. This is a little bit more of a complex and difficult skill, so if this would be too difficult for your students, start with just identifying, and then move to blending and segmenting, and then finally manipulation. Now when I do this lesson with a student, they would not see the words like I have them here on the screen. The words are my cues, but then the pictures would be available to them. So the pictures is what we're going to be tying to build that vocabulary and oral language link. So I would start with our word arm, which we just did together in that picture, and then I would say change the to t, and what's our new word? We come to art. And then we would find the picture in this group, what shows art, and they would identify the picture. Now change art, add k to the beginning. What's your new word? Cart, and we would find the cart. And we could talk about, we use a cart at a grocery store. We shop with our cart, we put the items in the cart, and then change t to d. What's your new word? And the new word is card, and they would identify the picture card. Some of the words might have a double meaning, right? So card could be like a birthday card, or it could be like a deck of cards that you play a card game with. So we can talk about that too, add in more visuals and discussion through that. We would go through this whole list, identify the pictures, and work on that manipulation skill. Lastly, we would extend this activity by focusing in on those oral language and vocabulary skills. So having students identify the words in their native language and then noting similarities. Are there some words that are cognates of others? Are there parts that are similar in the words? We would practice using new words and sentences. Now this is important to note, using gradual release with this. Maybe your student is at the point where they can come up with a sentence on their own, and that's great. If they're not, I would come up with a sentence and have them repeat after me. And then maybe they can use a sentence stem to create their own sentence after that. So just know where your student's at in that skill set with sentence forming and plan that accordingly. So to wrap up, phonemic awareness is the ability to hear and manipulate individual sounds and words. And instruction and practice in those skills is essential for all students according to the reading rope, but there are some adaptations we can make to make the instruction more effective for multilingual learners. And then lastly, it's important to connect to your students' native language to understand where they're at with their native language and their English language acquisition. It's important to provide opportunities to build their vocabulary and oral language proficiency. And it's important to determine what spoken sounds your student is struggling with and use the phonemic awareness lessons to target those sounds. It's a great opportunity to hone in on those specific sounds that are difficult for your student.